She was humiliated in front of everyone until the cold billionaire kissed her to silence the crowd. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The chandelier lights shimmered across the ballroom like frozen rain, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. Standing near the edge of the marble floor, Lily tried to steady her breathing. Her silver gown, borrowed from the styling team, felt heavier with every mocking glance she caught. She wasn't supposed to be here, not in a world of designer gowns, champagne towers, and people who spoke in half smiles and full judgments. But tonight, she had no choice. She was the billionaire's fiancée, or at least, that's what the contract said. Somewhere across the room, cameras flashed as Damien Hale, the man whose name could shake entire markets, greeted his investors with the same stoic face he wore at every board meeting. He was the definition of control: tall, precise, untouchable. And Lily, the waitress turned contracted fiancée, was just another prop in his perfect image. She reminded herself of the 3 rules he'd written in that cold, elegant tone of his. Don't fall in love. Don't speak unless spoken to. And don't embarrass him. Easy, she had thought. Until now. Oh, look. The charity case has arrived. A voice sliced through the chatter. The crowd shifted slightly, like predators scenting weakness. It was Vanessa, Damien's ex, her red lips curling as she eyed Lily from head to toe. Tell me, sweetheart, do they pay you by the hour or by event? The laughter that followed was soft but sharp, each note a blade. Lily's hands trembled. She could feel dozens of eyes watching her, waiting for a reaction, waiting to see the poor girl break. The room spun slightly. The perfume, the lights, the murmurs, all blurred into one cruel haze. Maybe she's practicing being rich, another woman added, her diamond bracelet flashing under the light. Lily's throat burned, her heart hammering. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the polished marble. For a second, she forgot how to breathe. And then silence. The kind of silence that feels like the world holding its breath. Footsteps echoed across the floor. Slow, deliberate, heavy with authority. Damien. His presence alone shifted the air. Without a word, he reached her side, his dark suit brushing against her arm, his hand finding her waist with calm precision. The crowd parted instinctively. Vanessa opened her mouth to speak again. But before she could, Damien turned to Lily. His gaze was unreadable, cold fire behind steel-gray eyes. And then he kissed her. Not gently, not politely. It was a deliberate, public, breathtaking kiss that erased the whispers and shattered the laughter. Gasps rippled through the room. The sound of camera shutters clicked like rain. Lily froze, her heart slamming against her ribs, her mind struggling to catch up. When he pulled away, his voice was low, controlled, carrying just enough power to silence everyone. Next time you speak about my fiancée, he said, his tone like ice over flame, make sure you remember who she is. And with that, the billionaire took her hand, leading her past the stunned crowd as if nothing had happened. But inside Lily's chest, everything had. Her humiliation had turned into something else, a confusion, a spark, a heartbeat she couldn't quiet. And though the contract said this was all for show, deep down, she knew something real had just begun. The moment Damien led Lily out of the ballroom, the noise of the crowd melted behind them like a wave crashing against glass. They stepped into the quiet corridor, the echo of their footsteps mingling with the faint hum of distant music. Lily's pulse was still racing, her skin burning where his hand had been. She wanted to speak, to ask why he did it, but her throat refused to cooperate. Damien finally stopped near the balcony, loosening his tie as if the air had turned heavier. You handled that well, he said, his tone calm, measured. Handled what? Lily's voice came out sharper than she meant. Being humiliated? Or being kissed without warning? Damien turned, his eyes unreadable. Both, he said simply. And you are welcome. The cool night air drifted through the open balcony doors, carrying the faint scent of rain. Lily crossed her arms, trying to hide the trembling in her hands. That kiss, it was not part of the contract. Damien looked out at the skyline, glittering beyond the glass. Neither was letting them mock you, he said quietly. You think I would stand there and let them treat you like that? You are my fiancée, Lily. Even if it is temporary, the world believes it is real. She wanted to argue, but his voice, steady and cold, left no space for protest. You do not have to protect me, she murmured. I have been insulted before. He turned back to her, his expression softer now, something almost human flickering behind the mask. You should not have to get used to it. For a moment, silence stretched between them. The lights from the city painted gold on his face, making him look less like the untouchable billionaire and more like a man. Lily's heart betrayed her with a single quick beat she could not hide. Well, she whispered. Thank you, I guess. Do not thank me, he replied. Just remember why you are here. He walked away before she could answer, leaving her alone with the echo of his footsteps and the taste of that kiss still lingering on her lips. The following morning, the world had not forgotten what happened. The tabloids were merciless. Billionaire Damien Hale's passionate kiss at the gala, read one headline. Another called her the mystery girl who captured the cold CEO. Every news channel replayed the clip, frame by frame, zooming in on her shocked face. By noon, her phone was buzzing nonstop, full of messages she did not want to read. In the Hale Corporation penthouse, Damien watched the coverage with a glass of black coffee in hand. His assistant, Marcus, hesitated by the door. Sir, this is getting out of control. Should we issue a statement? No, Damien said without looking away from the screen. Silence feeds curiosity, better than denial. And Miss Reed? Marcus asked. She will be fine, Damien said, though the faint crease between his brows suggested otherwise. Across town, Lily sat on the edge of her small bed, scrolling through headlines. Her stomach twisted as she read the comments, some cruel, some jealous, none kind. She had wanted to keep her head down, earn the payment, and disappear once the contract ended. Now her face was everywhere. That night, a black car arrived outside her apartment. A text from Damien flashed on her screen. Pack a bag. You are staying at the penthouse for now. She wanted to refuse, but she knew what the contract said. Public image must be maintained. Still, something in his tone, even through text, felt different. At the penthouse, Damien was waiting. The room was sleek, minimalist, the kind of place where every item had a price tag higher than her yearly rent. He stood by the window, city lights reflecting in his eyes. You did not have to send the car, she said. I could have handled myself. You could have, he admitted, but you will not have to. His words carried weight, the kind that made her chest tighten. When their eyes met, the world seemed to slow. For the first time, Lily wondered if the cold billionaire who kissed her in front of everyone had done it for show, or because, just for a heartbeat, it had felt real. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the wide glass windows of Damien's penthouse, glinting off polished marble and cold steel. Lily sat at the breakfast table, unsure if she was supposed to eat the perfectly arranged fruit in front of her. The silence was almost theatrical until Damien walked in, dressed sharply in gray, holding his phone. He looked as if last night's chaos had never happened. We have a meeting at 10, he said without looking up. Investors will expect both of us there. Lily blinked. Both of us? I thought I was just supposed to appear at events, not board meetings. He finally looked up, eyes steady. You are my fiancée. They will expect to see you by my side. Keep your answers short. Smile when appropriate. His tone was clipped, professional, and it made her chest tighten with irritation. Do I also get a manual for how to breathe? She muttered under her breath. Damien's mouth twitched, almost like the ghost of a smile. You seem to be doing fine on your own. Hours later, the Hale Corporation boardroom shimmered with glass and power. Men in tailored suits and women in designer dresses greeted Damien with admiration that bordered on fear. Lily stood slightly behind him, feeling like she had wandered into a world she was never meant to see. One of the board members leaned over with a polite but pointed smile. Miss Reed, is it? Quite the whirlwind romance, from what the press says. The tone was syrupy sweet, but the meaning underneath was sharp as glass. Damien cut in before Lily could answer. Our personal life is not a matter of board discussion, he said smoothly. The room quieted immediately. That was his power. He did not need to raise his voice. He simply commanded silence. After the meeting, Damien walked ahead, while Lily followed, still fuming. You could have let me answer, she said when the elevator doors closed. You hired me to play a role, Damien. Maybe let me play it. He turned slightly, the edge of amusement in his eyes gone. You think this is a game, Lily? The people in that room would devour you for sport. I am protecting what we built. What we built, she snapped. This is your empire, not mine. I am just a name on a piece of paper. He pressed the button for the top floor, his jaw tightening. Maybe? But right now, that name protects both of us. The elevator doors opened into a hush of expensive silence. Damien stepped out first, but Lily's words followed him. You do not have to control everything, you know. He stopped, shoulders tense, then turned slowly. When you have lost everything once, you learn control is the only thing that stays. The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. For the first time, his walls cracked just slightly. Later that evening, Lily wandered through the penthouse, restless. On a side table, she noticed a framed photograph turned face down. Curiosity won over caution. She picked it up and froze. It was Damien, younger, smiling, beside a woman with kind eyes. His late fiancée, she realized. The one the tabloids said had died in an accident 3 years ago. Her chest tightened with understanding. He had not been born cold. He had been burned. When Damien found her holding the frame, he stopped at the doorway, his expression unreadable. You should not go through my things, he said quietly. Lily set the photo down gently. I was not going through them. It was just there. A long silence followed. She looks kind, Lily said softly. She was, he replied, his voice almost a whisper. Too kind for this world. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, grief, recognizing grief. The air grew heavier, charged with emotions. Neither wanted to name. Dinner will be ready soon, he said finally, turning away. You can join me or not. When he left, Lily stood there, staring at the city lights flickering below, realizing that beneath all the contracts, power, and silence, there was a man still haunted by what he could not save. And for the first time, she wondered if she was meant to heal him, or if, by being near him, she was the one being healed. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the wide glass windows of Damien's penthouse, glinting off polished marble and cold steel. Lily sat at the breakfast table, unsure if she was supposed to eat the perfectly arranged fruit in front of her. The silence was almost theatrical, until Damien walked in, dressed sharply in gray, holding his phone. He looked as if last night's chaos had never happened. We have a meeting at 10, he said, without looking up. Investors will expect both of us there. Lily blinked. Both of us? I thought I was just supposed to appear at events, not board meetings. He finally looked up, eyes steady. You are my fiancé. They will expect to see you by my side. Keep your answers short. Smile when appropriate. His tone was clipped, professional, and it made her chest tighten with irritation. Do I also get a manual for how to breathe? She muttered, under her breath. Damien's mouth twitched, almost like the ghost of a smile. You seem to be doing fine on your own. Hours later, the Hale Corporation boardroom shimmered with glass and power. Men in tailored suits and women in designer dresses greeted Damien with admiration that bordered on fear. Lily stood slightly behind him, feeling like she had wandered into a world she was never meant to see. One of the board members leaned over with a polite but pointed smile. Miss Reed, is it? Quite the whirlwind romance, from what the press says. The tone was syrupy sweet, but the meaning underneath was sharp as glass. Damien cut in before Lily could answer. Our personal life is not a matter of board discussion, he said smoothly. The room quieted immediately. That was his power. He did not need to raise his voice. He simply commanded silence. After the meeting, Damien walked ahead while Lily followed, still fuming. You could have let me answer, she said when the elevator doors closed. You hired me to play a role, Damien. Maybe let me play it. He turned slightly, the edge of amusement in his eyes gone. You think this is a game, Lily? The people in that room would devour you for sport. I am protecting what we built. What we built, she snapped. This is your empire, not mine. I am just a name on a piece of paper. He pressed the button for the top floor, his jaw tightening. Maybe, but right now, that name protects both of us. The elevator doors opened into a hush of expensive silence. Damien stepped out first, but Lily's words followed him. You do not have to control everything, you know. He stopped, shoulders tense, then turned slowly. When you have lost everything once, you learn control is the only thing that stays. The honesty in his tone caught her off guard. For the first time, his walls cracked just slightly. Later that evening, Lily wandered through the penthouse, restless. On a side table, she noticed a framed photograph, turned face down. Curiosity won over caution. She picked it up and froze. It was Damien, younger, smiling beside a woman with kind eyes. His late fiancée, she realized. The one the tabloids said had died in an accident 3 years ago. Her chest tightened with understanding. He had not been born cold. He had been burned. When Damien found her holding the frame, he stopped at the doorway, his expression unreadable. You should not go through my things, he said quietly. Lily set the photo down gently. I was not going through them. It was just there. A long silence followed. She looks kind, Lily said softly. She was, he replied, his voice almost a whisper. Too kind for this world. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Grief. Recognizing grief. The air grew heavier, charged with emotions neither wanted to name. Dinner will be ready soon, he said finally, turning away. You can join me or not. When he left, Lily stood there, staring at the city lights flickering below, realizing that beneath all the contracts, power, and silence, there was a man still haunted by what he could not save. And for the first time, she wondered if she was meant to heal him, or if, by being near him, she was the one being healed. Days passed, and what had started as a contract began to feel dangerously close to something else. The morning light in the penthouse no longer felt cold. It fell across the breakfast table, where Lily and Damien sometimes sat in silence, pretending not to notice how their eyes met between sips of coffee. One night, after a long charity gala, the two returned home in the same car. The city lights blurred outside as the rain streaked down the window. Lily leaned her head against the glass, exhausted. Do you ever get tired of pretending? She asked softly. Damien looked at her reflection in the glass. Every day, he said. Then why keep doing it? He hesitated, his voice quieter now. Because walking away feels worse. The honesty in his tone caught her off guard, and for the first time, she saw the loneliness he kept hidden beneath the armor of wealth and control. You know, she said gently, you do not have to be the man the world expects. You can just be you. And who is that? He asked. Someone who kissed me in front of hundreds of people to protect me. she said with a faint smile. Someone who is not as cold as he pretends to be. Damien looked away, but the corner of his mouth lifted ever so slightly. The next morning, Lily found herself alone in the penthouse. Damien had left early for meetings, but on the dining table, there was a small white box with her name written in his sharp handwriting. Inside was a silver bracelet with a simple engraving. For appearances, the note said, but beneath the words was something deeper, unspoken. Later that week, Damien invited her to accompany him to the company's quarterly celebration, a formal event filled with investors and media. It is important, he told her. We must look united. We are you? She teased. He gave a short smirk. Same thing tonight. The ballroom was even grander than before. Chandeliers dripping with light, and photographers flashing as they entered arm in arm. Lily wore a gown of deep emerald that brought out the warmth in her eyes, and for once she felt confident walking beside him. Throughout the evening, they played their roles perfectly smiles. Hand on his arm, polite laughter, but every now and then, their eyes met in moments that felt too real to fake. Everything was going smoothly, until a voice called out from behind them. Vanessa, Damien's ex, approached with a glass of champagne and a smirk sharp enough to cut glass. Well, if it is not the lovebirds, she said sweetly. Tell me, Lily, how much does the contract pay these days? Or is this one pro bono? The words sliced through the air, and the crowd turned, hungry for scandal. Damien's jaw tightened, but before he could speak, Lily did. Actually, she said calmly, it pays in patience. Late nights, and learning to stand next to someone who pretends not to care but actually does. Vanessa blinked, her smile faltering. The crowd fell silent, uncertain whether to laugh or applaud. Damien stepped closer, his hand finding Lily's, grounding her. Careful, Vanessa, he said in a low voice. You might start sounding jealous. She scoffed and walked away, defeated, her heels clicking against the marble floor. As the music resumed, Damien looked down at Lily, his voice softer now. You did not need me to defend you this time. Maybe I learned from the best, she said. He laughed quietly, something rare and unguarded. You are full of surprises, Miss Reed. You have no idea, she whispered. They danced then, slowly, the world fading around them. The cameras flashed again, but this time, it did not feel staged. The night ended, with them standing on the balcony, the city glowing below. Damien looked at her, and for once, the cold in his eyes was gone. You were right, he said. About what? Pretending does get exhausting. He paused, stepping closer. So maybe it is time we stop. And though neither of them said the words out loud, both knew that, from that night on, the line between contract and love had completely disappeared. The days after the gala felt different. Something unspoken had settled between them, fragile and real, like a thread neither dared to touch too tightly. Damien still carried himself with the same calm authority, but there was a softness now, a quiet awareness whenever Lily entered the room. One morning, while she prepared coffee, he stood by the window, watching the skyline painted gold by sunrise. We made the front page again, he said, holding up the paper. The photo showed them dancing, his hand at her waist, her smile radiant. The headline read, Hail Heir and His Mystery Fiancé. The real deal? Lily tried not to blush. They make it sound like a fairy tale. Fairy tales always end before the real work begins, he replied, setting the paper down. Are you saying this is work? She teased. Everything worth keeping is, he said quietly. That night, Damien hosted an exclusive dinner at the penthouse for potential investors. It was a chance to secure a partnership that could change his company's future. Lily was by his side, elegant in black, greeting guests with a grace that surprised even him. Everything was running perfectly, until one of the guests, a rival executive named Conrad Shaw, decided to stir trouble. "So, Miss Reed," he said with a smug grin, swirling his wine, "tell us, how did you two meet? Some say it was business, others say romance. Which is it really?" The room grew still. Damien started to speak, but Lily beat him to it. "It started as business," she said, smiling calmly. "But sometimes business teaches you more about the heart than you expect." A few polite chuckles followed, but Conrad's eyes gleamed with malice. How poetic. Though rumor has it, there was a contract involved. Tell me, how romantic can a signature be? Damien's fork hit the plate with a soft clang. His voice was low, dangerous. "Watch your tone." Conrad shrugged. "Just making conversation. Surely you do not expect people to believe this fairy tale?" Before anyone could react, Conrad pulled out his phone and placed it on the table. "I have sources, Damien. People talk, especially when a woman like her comes from nothing and suddenly lives in a penthouse. Sounds like a convenient arrangement to me." The words hung in the air like poison. Lily's face drained of color. She could see flashes from the cameras outside the window. The reporters had already caught the scent of a scandal. Damien stood slowly, his presence towering over the room. "Dinner is over," he said flatly. "You can find your way out." Conrad smirked, unbothered, and walked out with a mocking nod. When the last guest left, the silence felt heavy enough to break glass. Lily turned to Damien, her voice trembling. "He was not wrong, was he? It was an arrangement. You bought my time, and now the world knows it." Damien's jaw tightened. "You think that is what this is now?" "What else could it be?" she whispered, tears glinting in her eyes. "It started with a lie, and now it is ruining you." He stepped closer, his voice rough with emotion. "It is not a lie anymore." She shook her head, backing away. "You can fix this, Damien. Just end the contract. Tell them it was fake. I will disappear." "No," he said, his tone fierce, almost desperate. "I will not let them destroy what we have." "What we had was business," she said, her voice breaking, "but I was the fool who made it personal." She turned and walked toward the door, her heels clicking against the marble, the sound echoing in the vast, empty space. Damien called her name, but she did not look back. When the elevator doors closed, he stood alone, the city lights flickering behind him, reflecting off the glass, like shattered promises. For the first time, the man who had controlled everything realized he was powerless to stop the one thing that truly mattered from slipping away. The next few days passed in a blur for both of them. Damien threw himself into work, his cold demeanor back in full force, while Lily, feeling abandoned, retreated to her small apartment. The space that once felt like a temporary refuge now felt like a prison. Her phone lay untouched on the table, the messages from Damien piling up, all left unanswered. She could still feel his words from that night. How desperate he had sounded. How determined to keep her by his side. But she had made up her mind. She couldn't be part of his world any longer. She was too much of an inconvenience to him. Just a fleeting distraction in his perfect, controlled life. One evening, as she sat on the couch, staring at the dim screen of the television, a knock echoed through her apartment. She glanced at the door, confused. No one came to visit her. Not anymore. When she opened it, her heart skipped a beat. There stood Damien, looking as he always did, dressed in a tailored suit. His face unreadable, but his eyes soft with something she couldn't place. He held a bouquet of white roses in his hand. "I don't want them," she said, her voice cold, but it was shaking. "Lily, please," he said, his voice almost breaking. "I messed up. I should have never let you leave." "No, Damien," she replied, shaking her head. "You can't fix this. You've spent so long controlling everything, but this, you can't control my feelings. You can't control me." He stepped forward slowly, as if every movement was calculated. "I know I've made mistakes. I can't undo them, but I can make things right. I want to try. I don't care about the contract anymore, Lily. I don't care about what people think. She felt her chest tighten, the walls she had carefully built around her heart beginning to crack. She wanted to believe him, more than anything, but the doubts were too loud in her mind. You don't understand, she whispered. You're not just some CEO. You're a man who's been taught that everything comes with a price. And her words faltered as she looked at him. The man who had been so distant, so detached, and now stood in front of her, vulnerable, lost. You don't need me to fix you, Damien. You need to fix yourself. He stood there, looking at her, as if trying to understand the weight of her words. Lily, he said, his voice softer now. I don't know how to fix myself, but I know I don't want to lose you. I've never needed anyone like I need you. The sincerity in his eyes caught her off guard. It was raw, unfiltered, and it stirred something deep within her. For the first time, she saw him for who he truly was, a man who had been broken by the world and was now desperate to find something real. I'm not the woman you think I am, she whispered. I'm not some prize to be won. He shook his head. I don't think that. I never did. He stepped forward again, closer this time, until the space between them was almost non-existent. I need you, Lily. Not because of the contract, but because you're the one thing I've ever had that felt like it mattered. The words hung in the air, heavy and sincere. Lily's heart raced as she looked up at him. There was no more mask, no more control, just him, a man who had finally let down his walls. She took a deep breath, her voice barely above a whisper. Damien, I can't keep living in your world of lies. If we're going to do this, it has to be real. No more pretending. For the first time, he smiled genuinely. No more pretending, he agreed. With that, he took a step back, offering her the roses. She reached out, hesitated, and then took them from him. It was a simple gesture, but in that moment, it felt like a promise to rebuild, to stop pretending, and to face whatever came next together. Damien didn't speak as he left that night, but when the door closed behind him, Lily felt a shift. She had made her decision, and now, so had he. The contract that once defined them no longer mattered. What lay ahead was something they would have to build together, something real. The days that followed felt like an awakening for both of them. Damien and Lily had begun to peel back the layers they had spent so long hiding behind. For the first time, it was not about the image they projected to the world, but about who they truly were, what they truly needed. They spent the next few weeks together, mostly in silence, but there was a new understanding between them. No more pretending, no more acting. The morning sun now felt warmer, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Damien didn't feel the weight of his title. Lily, too, had started to find pieces of herself that she had buried under her role as the fiancée. She had always been more than the contract. She had always been more than the part she was playing. And for the first time, Damien saw it too. One morning, after a late-night discussion about the future of Hale Enterprises, they found themselves sitting side by side on the balcony, watching the sun rise over the city. It was quiet, peaceful, a rare moment of calm in their usually hectic lives. Damien turned to her, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily, I've been thinking. She raised an eyebrow, meeting his gaze. About what? He took a deep breath, his eyes searching hers, as if trying to find the right words. I want to make things right, not just for us, but for everything. For you, for what we are. She felt a flutter in her chest. There had always been something about him, something that made her believe in the man beneath the surface. But now, she saw it more clearly. What do you mean? She asked, her voice soft. I want to give you more than just a title. I want to give you a choice. I want you to have a say in everything. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle between them. I want this to be real. From now on. His sincerity was enough to make her heart race. She could see the change in him, the vulnerability he had never shown before. The man who had once been so cold, so detached, was now standing before her, willing to be real. "Damien," she whispered, her voice catching. "Are you sure? This isn't just about saving face anymore?" He shook his head, his eyes never leaving hers. "No, this is about us. About what we want. What we both want." Lily felt a warmth spread through her. Something that had been missing for so long. A warmth that had nothing to do with fame, money, or appearances. It was simply about two people who had found something real in a world that had told them it didn't exist. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady now. "But you have to promise me one thing." "Anything," he replied, his tone serious. She took a deep breath, her heart pounding in her chest. "Promise me you will never hide from me again. Promise me you will always choose us." A long pause hung in the air as Damien processed her words. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I promise. I will choose us. Always." And in that moment, everything shifted. The contract that had once defined them, the lies they had lived with, the roles they had played, it all faded into the background. They were no longer two people bound by a piece of paper. They were two people choosing each other, choosing love. Later that day, as they stood in front of the press for the first time, ready to announce their relationship to the world, Lily felt a sense of peace she had never known before. The cameras flashed, the reporters crowded, but this time, it didn't matter. What mattered was the man standing next to her, the one who had finally chosen her for who she was, not what she could offer. "Damien Hale and Lily Reed are no longer just a contract," he said, his voice strong and clear. "They are a choice, and it is the best choice I've ever made." Lily smiled, her heart full. The world would never understand what they had been through, but that was okay, because they understood. They had chosen each other, and that was all that mattered. Weeks passed since their public declaration, and everything between Damien and Lily had changed in the most profound way. The world had watched their transition from a business arrangement to something real, and the transformation was undeniable. They were no longer playing roles. They were living their truth. Damien had taken the reins of his company, with a renewed sense of purpose, no longer bound by the cold exterior he had built for himself. He made decisions with Lily by his side, as his partner, as his equal. They had built a team around them that believed in not just the company's vision, but in them. Damien and Lily had become a power duo, not just in the business world, but in life. Every morning they woke up together, making breakfast and laughing at the simplest things. Lily had found her place in this world, a world that was no longer dominated by titles or expectations. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the city, the same place where they had shared some of their most vulnerable conversations, Damien turned to her with a look that made her heart skip a beat. "Lily," he said, his voice filled with emotion, "I never imagined I could have this. Have you? I've spent my life building empires, but nothing has ever felt more real than this." Her eyes softened as she reached out to take his hand, her fingers brushing against his in the quiet of the night. "I didn't come here to save you, Damien," she said softly. "I came here to find myself." He smiled, the corners of his lips lifting in that rare way that only she knew. "And I think you've done just that," he replied, his eyes filled with admiration. "But we're not done, are we?" she asked, her voice teasing yet sincere. "No," he said, shaking his head. "We're just getting started." A few months later, Lily stood at the top of a grand staircase, wearing a simple yet elegant dress, waiting for Damien to join her. The room was filled with guests, some from business, some from personal circles. But this evening was different. This was not a gala, nor a corporate event. This was their wedding. There was no contract, no conditions, just two people who had found their way to each other. Through the mess, through the lies, through the past. They had built something beautiful, something real. As Damien approached, his usual composure softened. And for the first time, he was not the cold billionaire. He was the man who had chosen love. He extended his hand to her, a smile playing on his lips. "Are you ready?" he asked, his voice full of warmth. Lily took his hand, her heart swelling with emotion. "More than I've ever been," she said, her voice steady and confident. They walked down the aisle together, hand in hand, facing the world that had once tried to tear them apart. But now, nothing could touch them. Their love had become their greatest strength. At the altar, as they exchanged vows, Damien looked into Lily's eyes and said, "I promise to choose you every day, not because it's expected, but because it's the greatest privilege of my life." Lily's eyes shimmered with tears as she responded, "I promise to stand by you, not because I need to, but because I want to. You're my choice, Damien, always." And with that, they sealed their vows with a kiss that spoke of everything they had been through, everything they had overcome, and everything they would build together from that moment on. As the guests applauded, Damien pulled her into a close embrace, his lips near her ear. "We did it," he whispered. She pulled back slightly to look at him, her smile radiant. "No, Damien," she said softly. "We're just beginning." And with that, they walked into their future, side by side, stronger than ever. In a world that had once tried to define them by their contracts, they had rewritten their story, not as a business arrangement, but as a love that had defied all odds. The end was never really an end. It was just the beginning of something. More, a love that would last, a partnership that would endure, and a future that was theirs to create together.